when I talk about a kidney cleanse, for example, for eczema, you need to cleanse those kidneys so often just because of the work that they're doing to filter the blood. And it can take a couple years, honestly, with the amount of pathogens or bacteria or metal or whatever's in the blood that's in there. It can take a really long time of continuously filtering, cleaning the filter, filtering, cleaning the filter.
Welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. I'm your host, Lee Brandon. This work started for me several decades ago when I started to see the impact I could make on people, helping them to identify the root cause of their health problems that no doctor could figure out, including serious back, knee, shoulder and neck injuries, acne and eczema issues, severe gut health problems, even helping couples get pregnant after several IVF treatments had failed. And it really moves me to be able to help people in this way. And that is why I do what I do and why we have this show. This week on the Radical Health Rebel podcast, I'm thrilled to introduce Justin La Rue, a holistic nutritionist with a remarkable track record in helping people overcome eczema. Justin operates a thriving clinic in a small town in Ontario, Canada, where he uses an innovative approach to wellness. By meticulously analyzing client symptoms, examining their blood through a high-powered microscope, and conducting bioenergetic muscle testing, Justin gains deep insights into their health. Justin's practice is enhanced by his collaboration with his business partner, Jen. Together, they harness their combined strengths to energetically connect with clients worldwide, offering an intuitive assessment of their health. This unique method allows them to recommend tailored supplement protocols and alternative modalities that effectively recalibrate and restructure their clients' bodies. Join us as we dive into Justin's holistic techniques, explore the fascinating world of bioenergetics, and discover how his intuitive approach is transforming the lives of eczema sufferers. Justin La Rue, welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm actually very excited.
Yeah, it should be a really great conversation. And to kick things off, Justin, could you share your story and how you became interested in health and how you became so interested in helping people with eczema?
Yeah, okay. I'll try to give you the short version of this story. So I was working at a job running heavy equipment and in a dump for my dad for about 8 years. And in this time, I just slowly felt my soul like leaving my body. Like this just wasn't what was meant for me. And I could feel something inside. I needed to do something else, but I didn't know what that was. So for 8 long years, I just kind of like went down this road. I was breeding reptiles on the side. I was wakeboarding quite a bit. And in the meantime, I was listening to podcasts. So there was, Joe Rogan was a big one. And then another one was Aubrey Marcus. And when they started talking about psychedelics, and then it kind of bridged that gap into health, and it was alternative health. And when I started hearing about that kind of stuff, I think my mind started to kind of grow, like that consciousness aspect started to grow. And I was recognizing that I would retain information on health like very easily. My whole family is mechanical engineers, and I don't have a mechanical bone in my body. Like I can change my oil, but to understand the inner workings of a motor, it didn't stick with me. So when somebody would talk about the body or like the circulatory system or the lymphatic system, I would just say, oh, hey, that's really cool. But I would retain that information. So down the line, I ended up going through a divorce with my ex-wife. And that divorce kind of like broke me open to say, okay, now I have an opportunity to do something different. So Megan and I had split. I quit my job at La Rue's and I decided to go to school at the Institute of Holistic Nutrition to kind of get the fundamentals of health and nutrition. And in and around this time, my grandma was diagnosed with dementia, put into a home, and my uncle died of pancreatitis. And so there was this version of me, like this inner rebel that's kind of like lived in the shadows for a long time, that is just sick and tired of kind of accepting the norm. You know, like in a lot of people's minds, you just get old and then you get assigned a specific symptom or disease and then you die. And I'm like, that's bullshit. Like, how do we avoid that? There's got to be inner workings of how we can understand and kind of like hijack the inner workings of our body to prolong our lives. And I think that was really the foundational kind of catalyst that got me into the healthcare world. And then another thing with Aubrey, I remember him saying a life of service was better than money, essentially. And so I was trying to figure out, like, do I want to go into sales and try to make money? Because my ex was, she's quite big at Microsoft and did very well. But the whole life of service thing just really stuck with me. And I'm like, what can I do to help people and use my skills? And then they've really just grown from there.
So you graduated, you got your nutritional qualification, holistic nutritional qualification.
Yeah.
What was your next step?
So when I went back to school, I was like, I want to be the biggest nerd. I want to do whatever I can to get the best foot in the door to help myself. So while I was in school, I always had my kind of like ears open, just looking for stuff to propel me forward. And I had met a mentor who ended up being one of my teachers at the time. And her name is Jen Papakonstantinou, and her and I work together even now to this day. So when I graduated, I ended up doing co-op with Jen, and I had done a co-op in it was a kitchen called Ripe in Toronto, and they make bone broth and fruit juices and stuff like that. So I started co-oping and then working with Jen to help her and really just she is like the wildest practitioner I've ever seen work. She does both live blood analysis and then quantum reflex analysis, which is like muscle testing. And just watching her do that, I was like, this is what I need to do. I could feel it. And then in my gut, I'm like, this is the real shit. Like, this is where the magic happens. So I kind of just wedged my way into her family, essentially. And now we work together every Friday. We go to concerts together. We're quite close, but the work that we do together, I think, is pretty phenomenal. So she was the big catalyst in that situation that kind of pulled me into this industry more and more. And then I have a bone broth business on my end that I kind of do just to make ends meet and to get smaller portions of nutrition to people.
So at what point did you kind of think, right, I want to help people with skin conditions, including things like eczema?
I'll be very honest. Like, I personally have never suffered from eczema myself. And when the opportunity came up to give Jen a hand, there was a company that had reached out to Jen asking her to be their practitioner to make the protocols. And she already had a full-time business. So when it got to the point where these clients were coming more and more to Jen was like, hey, I need help. And at that point, I had been working with her for probably a year and a half. So I was at the point where we were distance muscle testing people. So it's almost as if we body double for somebody else or can mesh with somebody else's biofield, regardless of where they are on the planet. So after having a year of experience to figure out what that felt like, I had the capability to help her with these clients. So that's how that started.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So before we kind of dive deeper into that, what I think would be good, perhaps, if you could explain in your own words what you would describe eczema to actually be.
Yeah, I would love to. I think it's unique because I haven't been in that situation where I've gone through the whole diagnosis system. I haven't gone through the medical system with eczema because I think that paints you with a specific brush and implants an idea in your mind when you are suffering from eczema. In my own eyes, through my experience, eczema to me is mainly a symptom. It's the body's way of expressing to you that something's out of balance, and it's doing its best to both tell you and compensate by getting rid of toxins through your skin.
Yeah. I mean, I see it in exactly the same way. So it's good to hear someone else say the same thing that I see it as. But obviously, I mean, eczema is, for most people, it's obviously very itchy, and it's often from scabs. You could say it's a disruption of the skin barrier. Some of the things that I've kind of come across as well is things like they often have increased pH levels on the skin.
There's so many different forms that this is what I learned too. People would show up and they would say, I have eczema. And I'm like, that doesn't look like eczema. Or there's all of these different classifications, And I'm like, okay, it doesn't even look the same. Like the array of eczema that I've seen in this spectrum, it's bacterial infections, it's parasites coming out of your skin. It ranges completely. So when people say eczema, they think of one thing, but it's an umbrella. Like it's just skin conditions in general, like psoriasis. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that, in terms of skin conditions, I see the most in clients is acne. And again, there's so many different forms of acne.
Yes.
But the way I look at it, and I'm guessing you're probably going to agree with what I'm about to say, it doesn't really matter what type it is, because at the end of the day, it's just telling you, as you've said, there's a problem internally. You need to find out what that problem is and deal with it. It doesn't really matter what label you put on it. It's this kind of eczema, this kind of psoriasis, this kind of acne. I hear things all the time like, oh, I think I've got hormonal acne. I think I've got fungal acne. I think I've got cystic acne. And I just think it doesn't matter. It's acne, and it's a symptom, and it's telling you there's something wrong that you need to correct. It's as simple as
the
that.
Unique thing too, and you might notice this with acne, the location can sometimes be depictive of where or what's happening in the body. Right? People would come with dyshydrotic, which looks like little almost like little blisters on your fingers. And I started to see a correlation between heavy metal toxicity and the dyshydrotic. So, and for acne, you probably see if it's on your cheeks, like maybe that's more gut. And if it's on your jawline, it's more hormonal. So there's those indications, but you're right. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just your body informing you something's up to pay more attention or find out what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I often describe it as, it's like your check engine light on your dashboard of your car. It's telling you there's something wrong and you need to go and investigate and find out what that thing is. And, if it's your car, you're going to take it to your local mechanic and he's going to look at the engine, he's going to diagnose the problem, and he's going to fix the problem.
Right.
And for people that have conditions like eczema, that's their, that's their warning light coming on. And that's the time they reach out to someone like yourself who can, diagnose is the wrong word. Neither of us diagnose, but we find out what the issue is. Yeah. And then we help people come back to balance. One of my sayings is that health and disease can't live in the same body.
Right.
So if you get yourself healthy, you won't have eczema anymore. Rather than trying to treat eczema, get your body healthy from the inside out, and eczema won't be able to exist anymore.
Yeah, I want to throw something in there. Unfortunately, people like you and I are not the first ones that people go to when their check engine light comes on.
Yeah.
Like they'll start with the medical system, and that's when they start treating eczema.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, they have to go through the ringer of dealing with that shit for a long time before they get exhausted and they say, let's try something different, which ends up being alternative health, which ironically, alternative health is like allopathic health in the last 100 years. That's the alternative.
Yeah.
So what we're practicing or what we're learning is all of these older techniques from like Chinese medicine, Ayurveda. We're using homeopathics, which I'm pretty sure they had homeopathic schools before they had, or like hospitals before they had allopathic hospitals. Yeah. So we're using just older technology to help situations now. But we're definitely not the first stop.
Yeah, I actually, I occasionally pop onto Facebook groups, so acne Facebook groups, and occasionally I'll leave a message if I've got some time. And one lady was asking about these products, and normally I write a really long response because I'm trying to give them all I can.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? Let me try a different tactic because I want to help these people. And I just popped a question. I said, I hope you don't mind me asking, are you looking to treat your acne, or are you looking to cure your acne? And I just left it at that. And she got back to me and she went, I'm just looking to treat it. And I was like, okay, I've got nothing more to say.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good question for clients. Like, how committed to healing are you? Because unfortunately, it does take time. And most often it costs something. It's likely going to cost you a couple grand by the time things are said and done, but there's a trade-off. So you really want to find out the commitment level before you decide to give, because I can give everything. Like, I often, especially when you start tapping into the energetics of how it works, if I give too much of myself, I start to take on their symptoms, or like I end up getting sick, which was a bit of a learning curve for me too. So you have to check in to say, what's the trade-off? How willing are you to do this? Because I'll hold space if you want to.
Yeah. And the thing with eczema, and again, I'm sure you've experienced this, is that generally speaking, people go to their medical doctor, dermatologist, whoever it might be, and normally the number one tool in their toolbox is topical steroids, right? And we all know temporarily they're probably going to reduce symptoms a little bit, but that's treatment, that's not cure, right? And then, as a lot of people find out, is that the steroids are a lot more problematic than the eczema they had in the first place. Imagine being able to finally say goodbye to the constant itchiness, discomfort, and embarrassment of eczema. Meet Lissa, a 25-year-old accounts manager who struggled with her lifelong eczema until she found a solution that changed her life. Lissa reached out to me feeling skeptical after countless failed attempts to find relief. But with a personalized diet and lifestyle plan tailored to her individual needs, we were able to identify and treat an underlying fungal infection that had been exacerbating her eczema. Lissa's eczema not only cleared up, but she also unexpectedly experienced relief from headaches and a dramatic improvement in her asthma. And as her skin healed, so did her confidence, leading to a newfound sense of self-assurance and empowerment. If you're tired of feeling uncomfortable in your own skin and want to experience the same life-changing results as Lissa, take the next step towards clear, healthy skin. Schedule a consultation with me today at www.bodycheck.co.uk/consultation and take the first step towards a happier, healthier you. Don't let eczema control your life any longer. Take charge of your health and unlock the confidence and freedom you deserve. Your journey to great skin starts now.
Yeah, I've seen some really, really bad reactions, like TSW. I didn't even know what TSW was until I started working with eczema. So it was horrifying. And as an empath, when you're dealing with that, oh my God, to just see what people go through, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I wish I could help you till the end of all of this. And many times that we do, but it's quite devastating, honestly.
Yeah. So just for the listeners, TSW is topical steroid withdrawal.
Yeah.
I actually watched a month or so ago a documentary called Preventable. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, I haven't.
It's all about topical steroid withdrawal, and it's something that I would highly recommend if someone has just started getting eczema and they haven't been to see anyone yet. Definitely watch that before making any decision.
Phenomenal. Actually, I want to plug another documentary I watched. It's called Root Cause. And I put this in there because there are many times when people have eczema and they come in and we test all through their bodies and you recognize it's in their teeth. They have a root canal or a couple root canals or mercury fillings. The mouth, there's a very high percentage of people whose issues stem from oral health. And that documentary, Root Cause, is a really good one if you are dealing with a root canal to watch that before you deal with any sort of dentist, just because it gives you that foundation, right? At least you have something where you can kind of root into to hold some ground.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. I started getting mercury fillings when I was 13.
Yeah.
That was when I started getting acne.
Yeah.
And over the next 3 years, I had 5 fillings and 1 root canal. And
Jesus.
And the root canal was almost entirely metal. So there was very little actual enamel left of the tooth. So about 10 years ago, I think it was, I started having all these metal fillings replaced.
Yeah.
And I think I had one side of the jaw done, and then I had the other side of the jaw done. And obviously I was running heavy metal detoxes after that for quite a while.
Yeah.
But the root canal, obviously, that needed to come out. And it was a few years after that I kind of had to save up, because it wasn't a cheap operation. And I went to the best person in the UK I could find to do it.
Yeah.
And I finally had that out, ironically, during lockdown, which was another story I think I've told before on my podcast, which is quite funny, because I didn't stick to any of the rules. So it was quite funny that in the middle of all the hysteria that everyone thought I was crazy. But that's another story.
It's a good place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what's quite interesting is, you mentioned, it might cost someone a couple of $1,000s to get the right help.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to think, what did it cost me to get just my metal fillings replaced? So I'm going to guess roughly. So it'd been about 200, 400, 600, 1,000, about £7,000.
Wow.
Which is probably
just for your teeth.
Yeah. So, US dollars at the moment, that's probably about $9,500 US.
Yeah.
Plus I spent around £6,000 on acne treatments.
Yeah.
Right. So £2,000 to sort that out from the beginning is actually going to save you a lot of money.
It really will. And I think that's the hard part for most people, is creating that trust. And like, why they've been bullshitted many times. So they're like, why should I trust you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't have an answer for that. I would like to earn that trust, but just as a genuine person, I'm not here to take anyone's money or waste your time. It's like, I've kind of done the work to do that. But you're right. It's, if people could trust us from the beginning, I think that would save them a lot of time and money. But for a lot of us, including myself, I like to choose the hard way, because you end up learning more. But yeah, it's subjective. It depends on the person.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not one to judge. It took me 18 years of trying to treat my acne before, but it was mainly just complete ignorance. There was no one around when I was trying to look for a solution. Things like functional medicine didn't exist. It was a long time before that even existed. And it was only by chance that, I happened to be in a lecture at a conference in the UK in the year 2000, and I'm seeing this guy talk, and he's talking about how the foods you eat affects your hormones, and how your hormones can affect your skin, and how food sensitivity is going to affect your skin.
Right.
And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, my doctor's been telling me for all these years that your diet doesn't affect your skin. Right. And then as soon as I got the help I needed, I reversed my acne very quickly. Now, I mean, even though I've helped many people overcome their acne, very few people I've seen reverse it as quickly as I did.
So what did you do? Was it mostly diet? Did you do gut healing? Like, was the acne for you specifically in your gut?
Yeah, good question. So I went to see this guy. I'm talking the year 2000. So, we've moved on a lot in terms of testing and stuff. But
yeah,
this guy ran loads and loads of tests on me. And he said, the first thing, he said, stop taking those antibiotics. They're not doing you any good. I'd been on them for 18 years, right? So just think about what condition my gut microbiome or any microbiome would have been, right?
I can't even imagine. That's so long.
Yeah. Right.
Wow.
I mean, yeah. Anyway, so, and then unsurprisingly, I mean, I didn't really know this stuff back then, but he said, and you've got a candida overgrowth, right? Surprise, surprise, right? Being on antibiotics for all that time. And of course, at that time, I also had a mouthful of fillings. And he said, and you're sensitive to all these foods. And he brought this sheet of A4 paper, and it was pretty much full.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. And so he said, right, these are the foods you need to avoid because you've got a fungal infection. These are the foods that you need to avoid because your food sensitivities. And here's a list of foods that you can eat, right? So I literally, and the things that I shouldn't have been eating was everything that I was eating, right?
Yeah.
Everything I was eating was on my do not eat list, right?
Well, yeah, because your gut was probably so leaky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went home, threw everything out of my kitchen cupboards, went to the supermarket. That was probably the last year I actually used supermarkets, and completely restocked. And within a couple of weeks, my skin was completely fine.
Isn't it cool when
Yeah.
it starts to change?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I say that, not many people I've seen change that quickly, because I don't want everyone to think that that's everyone's reality, because,
Right.
for some people, they could have to go through so many different processes. Again, if you need to get metal fillings out of your mouth, and then you need to get all the metal that's stored in your cells as well out of the system. And,
It's a long road for some people. Some people change quickly. Like they would do one protocol and they're like, hey, I think I'm done the program.
yeah,
I'm like, I know you for a fact you're not, but if that's how you feel, go for it.
yeah,
And other people, they would be on 6 or 7 protocols deep. And there's one analogy, actually, I posted a video yesterday about it. I have a pool, and overnight, kind of in like, let's say April, it just turned green. And I was like, oh my God, here we go. And the analogy that I have for most of my clients is explaining to them, listen, the pool pump that runs the pool that has the filter in it is the same thing as your organ systems. So sometimes it takes so long just letting the blood circulate through the organs and then dumping the organs. Like when I talk about a kidney cleanse, for example, for eczema, you need to cleanse those kidneys so often just because of the work that they're doing to filter the blood. And it can take a couple years, honestly, with the amount of pathogens or bacteria or metal or whatever's in the blood that's in there. It can take a really long time of continuously filtering, cleaning the filter, filtering, cleaning the filter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and there are certain cleanses that I recommend to people do on a 6 monthly or yearly basis, just for maintenance. Because the way that I try and describe the liver to people, I say think of it like a carburetor in an old style engine.
Yeah,
you'd have to either replace or clean out the carburetor every so often. It's like, well, in the world we live in today, full of these hundreds of thousands of unnatural man-made chemicals, we need to clear that out of the system just to maintain health, even if we're our own perception of ourselves is that we're healthy. To maintain that, you probably still need to run certain cleanses throughout the year just to keep that.
I agree with you. And it's no longer about what you're putting in your body. And not everybody, but a lot of people will say, oh, I eat really clean. And it's like, that's a really great foundation. But the contrast to that is, what are you doing to detoxify the toxins? Because regardless of whether we try to absorb or inhale, there are toxins in our environment everywhere. They're literally everywhere. So as important as it is to figure out what am I putting into my body that's good, I think it's this new kind of paradigm of what's the focus on getting the toxins out of your body,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, one thing that I haven't mentioned to you yet. So I had acne from the age of 13 to 31. I also had eczema from the age of 19 to 20. Yeah, about an 18-month period.
Yeah.
At 19, I had acne and eczema at the same time.
Yeah.
So I'd have acne on my face, my chest, and my back. But I'd have eczema on the insides of my elbows and the backs of my knees.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, I mean, again, when you're looking back, it's like, well, I was constantly taking antibiotics. And I don't know why the eczema went away, but for some reason it just disappeared. I didn't do anything. It just went.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that happens. Like your body can keep up, or your organs, your body's a self-cleaning organism. You know what I mean? As if you changed your diet, or if you changed your environment, or you lessen some of the inflammation load, like that in itself is going to give your body space, and it'll drain your metaphorical bucket of toxins. So that can be very helpful for you. And all the areas that they showed up, that's like that's lymphatic system.
Mm.
That's a very, 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 if not with every eczema client, the most common areas is just high lymphatic movement.
Yeah.
Or like areas that go through a lot of lymph movement.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've touched on a few already, but what would you say, from your experience, are some of the key causes of eczema? Hey Rebels, I'm briefly interrupting this episode to share some really exciting news with you. As of this month, July, I will be releasing an extra No Punches Pulled episode every month with an amazing and almost certainly controversial guest who's not scared to put their head above the parapet. These guests will be exposing lies and corruption, sharing their stories of being gaslit or cancelled for telling the truth, and offering real-world solutions to achieving optimal health and maintaining freedom amidst increasing censorship and restrictive regulations. These are the types of episodes I started producing back in 2022, for which I was cancelled on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and deplatformed from LinkedIn. These additional episodes will be for subscribers only. For the equivalent of one takeaway coffee per month, you can become a paid subscriber and receive exclusive access to content the authorities don't want you to hear. I really hope you can support the podcast to help it continue and also help me to bring you even better, more controversial, educational, and inspiring guests. Subscribing to the Radical Health Rebel podcast is a much more productive investment than supporting organizations that feed you lies, propaganda, and predictive programming like TV licensing, cable, satellite, and major film streaming services. Subscribing to the Radical Health Rebel podcast to receive premium content couldn't be simpler. Just go to the show notes, click on support the show, and follow the instructions. In fact, why not do it right now? And once you've subscribed, come straight back and listen to the rest of this episode. So for the equivalent of just one takeaway coffee per month, let's rebel against the mainstream narrative and create a healthier, fairer, and freer world together. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your support.
Okay. In my experience, some of the highest causes would be heavy metals. Heavy metals seem to be at the root of a lot of people's issues. For people that express eczema, it's typically heavy metals. And a lot of times there's a viral load underneath. It seems like there's layers. So the fine layers at the bottom are typically viral load and or heavy metal overload. And then the layers above it that most people see and that functional tests see would be candida, yeast, fungus, parasites, like that kind of stuff. So I would say, honestly, it was heavy metal toxicity from a lot of different areas.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, one thing that I've heard other people talk about a lot is Staphylococcus aureus is often related to eczema. Is that your experience?
I mean, okay, so this is another thing. People would say that they have staph, but then they would hyper focus on the staph on their skin. And personally, I was more focused on what was happening internally. So there are things you can use topically, like hypochlorous acid and stuff like that, to neutralize the skin, or like beef tallow or bone marrow, stuff like that would help topically. I was more focused on, okay, what's on the inside, creating the internal environment that's allowing for the staph to continue to grow back. And I think people would hyper focus on that. But again, they're so concentrated on what's happening with my skin that I can see that it's overwhelming. So I'll be honest, I didn't really focus on that aspect too much because I knew what was happening on the outside was happening worse on the inside. So that was more of my focus.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, it comes back to what I said earlier. It doesn't really matter because everyone's different. Every individual is different. And, you know, the way that the likes of us work is we treat every individual as different. We don't say, oh, you've got eczema, therefore it must be this or it must be that. It's like, let's look at you as an individual and let's work out why those symptoms are appearing on your skin.
Yeah, I want to add one more thing too. It's not just heavy metals. It pertains to the nervous system. The nervous system becomes dysregulated. When the nervous system isn't functioning properly, your endocrine system's not functioning properly because the heavy metals are in there, You know what I mean? Like they're disrupting the electrical impulses. The body can't go into rest and digest. It's stuck in that fight or flight. And so that nervous system is typically the first thing that you need to deal with. If you go after heavy metals right away, it's a gong show. Like you're not going to have a happy client. They're going to feel like they're dying. It's not good. If you regulate the nervous system correctly, the body will start to purge on its own, which is really unique. This is something I've been learning in the last year, honestly, is targeting the nervous system and the endocrine system and having the body regulate. Then it does what it's supposed to do. And then you don't actually have to do much of a kill phase because the body's actually initiated that as it's healing.
So are you talking people that are mainly like sympathetic nervous system dominant and they need to become more parasympathetic? Is that kind of what you're saying?
No, I would just say like adrenal fatigue. I think even when people come in, they're like, oh, I have thyroid issues. I'm like, I bet you have adrenal issues that are now going to your thyroid. So adrenal, the HPA, right? The adrenal, pituitary, the hypothalamus. When those aren't collaborating, the whole body's kind of in some sort of disarray. So when you can recalibrate even those three, the nervous system will click into, because the vagus nerve gets thrown in there too. And then recently, in the past, I don't know, let's say 3 years, there's been the virus that's just been impacting nervous systems too. And we find it in the vagus nerve all the time. And I always have a virus in my vagus nerve. So when I feel dysregulated, there's typically a viral load. And when you stack that on top of all the other issues, it just becomes very deep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So why, in your opinion, is it so difficult for so many people to heal from eczema?
I think they get the runaround quite a bit. I think the journey can be long for people. I don't think they acknowledge necessarily what it takes. Let's just say their understanding of the body doesn't match what they think should be happening. So their expectations kind of get out of line. And so when they think something should be a quick fix and then it lingers for so long, there's a lot of discouragement and then it starts to affect the mental. So I think there's quite a few things that get in the way of healing. A lot of it would be, like energetic, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, what you're describing really is conditioning. Like, people are conditioned to believe that when they have a condition, they pop a pill, they have something cut out of the body, they get injected with something, and that's going to fix all their problems.
It's disheartening.
Yeah. Whereas, as we've been discussing, what people need to do is to find out the root cause of the problem rather than just try and treat the symptom. Because the problem with treating the symptom and not treating the root cause, you can treat the symptom. And if whatever you're doing successfully treats the symptom, you've got to keep treating it. It's something that you're probably going to have to do forever. Do you really want to have to do that forever? And then, when you look at the negative side effects that these things often come with, and are often worse than the condition in the first place. And also the fact that you're not dealing with the root cause issues, let's say it's heavy metal toxicity, and it's not something you're addressing, and that heavy metal toxicity continues to increase. Where's that going to end up? It's not just going to be eczema, right?
No, it's going to feed the candida and the parasites in your body, and then you're going to end up with gut issues. You might end up with now mental issues because you don't have neurotransmitters functioning because they're all messed up in your gut, and then you have a collection of symptoms.
And you could end up with a disease that ends your life. Yeah, for sure. Right? Because again, eczema, it was that check engine warning light, and you decided to ignore it. We didn't ignore it. You went to someone, and what they told you to do was put a piece of black tape over the light on your dashboard and ignore what was going on in the engine.
Yeah, you're totally right. You did something. You went to the person that you were taught to trust, and unfortunately, they led you down the wrong road. So now they've kind of they've hurt your trust. You know what I mean? Like they've lied to you in some sort of way. And I think that part is the hardest part for people to recognize, especially older generations. No offense. Like if I try to tell my grandpa, like, don't do this, he's like, oh no, you trust those people. I'm like, okay, we're on different, we've learned some different stuff in our lifetimes already.
Yeah. I think I'm hoping that a lot of people in the last 4 years have begun to see the world as I've seen it for about the last 20 plus years. Is that
good for you?
Is that, you know, the medical establishment, if you're in serious danger, if your life's threatened, if you've broken a bone, it's amazing.
For sure.
It's amazing. Like there's no better place to be if your life's in danger or you've had a serious accident, serious injury. You know, I had a silly incident last year. I was paddleboarding with a friend. I fell into the water and I thought, hang on a minute, this doesn't seem right. There's blood floating in the water. And I thought, that can't be mine. And I looked down and there was this massive gash in my chest.
What did you land?
I have no idea. Right. So I had to go to the hospital and I'm thinking, oh, no, this is my worst nightmare, going to a hospital. But they were amazing. You know?
Okay, cool.
Apart from the time where the nurse who was treating me, he treated me amazing. I got absolutely no complaints, apart from she then started saying, oh, when did you last have a tetanus injection? And I was like, this could be an interesting discussion. And I thought, I just, because the thing was, I'd been to see a friend for a day. I don't get to see him very often. And now I'm spending most of the time in a hospital waiting room. And I just wanted to get back to his and, you know, enjoy his company.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, there's no way I'm having an injection. It was never going to happen. But then she said, oh, when you were young, were your parents anti-vaxxers? I just thought, how unprofessional is it to say something like that? That's just such a ridiculous thing to say. But anyway, I'm going off track a little bit. But, you know, whilst that part of the medical industry is amazing, when we're looking at chronic disease, which eczema is a chronic disease, or at least that's how I see it.
Yeah.
What it does is it profits off those diseases. It's all about how can we maximize profits off these people.
Yeah.
And in fact, how can we create other side effects so we can sell them more drugs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what a great business model. If you've got repeat business, you've got repeat business all the time, and then what you're selling them is going to make them need another one, and then you can keep selling them that. And there's no getting off the merry-go-round. It's just constant money, and you're not dealing with the root cause.
And I find that there's always development of new drugs, right? So let's say you go through X amount of rounds of steroids and you start to get keen to the idea that steroids aren't the way to go. And you start giving backlash to your dermatologist and they say, hey, look, we have a different thing. It's an injection. It's not a steroid. It's a biological. The same thing that your body produces, blah, blah, blah. Then you start, oh, okay, this is a more organic way of thinking. Let's try biologics. And then you do that for a little bit until you start to get kickback on that. But then it's like, oh, hey, there's a new pharmaceutical that's come out. This is a pill. And it just it's like a dog chasing its tail. It's that continuous system of, hey, let's try this. And I'll be honest, if I did that with my clients, I think I would quit the business. Like if I don't feel comfortable helping somebody, or if I don't feel confident that I can help them, I'll pass them off to somebody that can, you know, like I don't even like selling supplements to clients because of the price tag that goes along with it, where a lot of these doctors and like some naturopaths are just like, here, try this. I'm like, oh, that guts me. I would never say try this. Like I want to make sure that what you're using is energetically a match to your body so that your body's already accepted it before you put it in your mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Why for you are symptoms so important to your approach when it comes to helping people with eczema? I'd like to introduce you to Jill. Jill was a holistic lifestyle coach and Pilates instructor who had been struggling with eczema for her entire life. Despite following a healthy diet and lifestyle, her eczema had spread all over her body, leaving her frustrated and self-conscious. After thorough testing, we discovered that Jill had a parasite infection, leaky gut syndrome, and toxic overload. With a customized diet plan and a protocol to heal her gut and balance her gut microbiome, Jill started to see incredible results. In just a short amount of time, Jill's skin cleared up and she experienced a newfound sense of confidence and self-esteem. Thanks to the support she received, Jill was more able to socialize, feel more confident in her work, and ultimately live a happier and healthier life. If you're struggling with eczema, don't wait any longer. Seek the help that you need and start living your best life today. Contact me today and see how I can help you on your journey to great skin, because everyone deserves to feel their best, just like Jill. If you'd like to transform your skin like Jill did, request a consultation with me at www.bodycheck.co.uk/consultation. Now, back to the podcast.
It's the most beautiful language the body could speak. In terms of in what I do, like I love the study of symptoms. The body speaking to you, and then from that point, you get to use this puzzle of information, and then combine it with intuition to figure out what the hell's going on in this person's body, because it's honestly never the same. Sure, you can have the same symptoms with completely different root causes. So every time somebody sits down, you get to piece, when I say you, I mean me in this situation, I get to piece together this beautiful puzzle of what's happening based on what their body's expressing. The location, the type, what it's doing, how often it's doing it. The list goes on. And for me, it's just very exciting. Like I just love piecing that puzzle together and then helping somebody. And then when it relates to them and they're like, oh yeah, I do feel this. When you get those intuitive kicks and you ask questions and they're like, how did you know that? I'm like, I can feel it. Like, it's just, the body's incredible.
So one of the things you mentioned there was time of day of the symptoms. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. The Chinese organ clock is a really interesting one to use.
Yeah.
If you have a reoccurring issue at any time of day, it could be, I wake up at 4:00 in the morning every night, or I wake up at 2:00 a.m. on the dot, or 2:30, whatever. Look up Chinese organ clock. Many times your organs are doing something at a specific time. It's just the calibration of how your body works. And that could give a piece of that puzzle to a practitioner or to yourself. I'll get a lot of clients where it's either lungs or liver in the middle of the night. And maybe in your dreams, you're processing emotions, right? Because your body's going through this whole regime of cleaning. Your lymphatic is trying to wash the brain. You're resting, you're regenerating. And if there's a bit of a halt in that regeneration, sure, maybe it's the tissues in your lungs or in your liver, or maybe it's an emotional component. Maybe there's anger or frustration or guilt that's being held in that liver, and the lungs are trying to grieve something, you know? So that's another component of what Jen and I do, is integrating the emotional aspect into where organs are holding emotion. So that's the time component. It's quite, it can be very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I use the same system as well, which is quite interesting. And I also use the emotion code.
Yes.
So I use that as well. Dr. Bradley Nelson has been on this podcast talking about the emotion code as well. Which
no way. I actually read that book. I listened to it last month.
Right.
I get on these kicks of things that speak to me, right? And when I started hearing about the emotion code and just clearing emotions so simply, and then symptoms go away, for me, that was one of those, this seems too simple to be true. And then you just hear consistent feedback and testimonials, and I'm like, this can't be real. Like, I don't get it, but it sounds phenomenal. That, and then peptides. I'm big on peptides right now. That's the next thing that I'm going to really dive into.
Oh, that's interesting. Someone just contacted me about coming on the podcast to talk about peptides. Interesting.
It's I want to like keep them still hush, but for the people that need them, like, okay, come and see us. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Yeah, because I was not sure whether to have him on the show or not. Now you've mentioned it, it's like maybe the universe is trying to tell me something.
I think that they are pretty phenomenal. I've done one round to help with muscle growth, just to kind of give me an advantage. And then it worked quite well. I didn't notice until after I'd finished it. And I was like, holy shit, there is quite a bit of a difference. But I recently tore my MCL and I got some whiplash, both from board sport accidents. And I refuse to stop riding as I get older. And it's like, how do I keep my body at a point where I can handle some of these bigger falls? And when I look into what peptides can do for your skeletal system, and that's like a very limiting thing to say too, because apparently they have a vast range of areas they can help with. So I'm kind of venturing into those to see, okay, how can I regenerate my body? Because to a certain extent, I can't rely on food. I use bone broth quite a bit. Like I drink a lot of bone broth, but there's got to be something else to help with tendon, muscle, joint, and ligament stability.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So can you share with us a little bit about how you actually work with people with eczema and the kind of techniques you use? Like you mentioned blood work and
yeah, I would love to.
And the muscle testing, etc.
So there are two situations. One is in person and the other is distant. When somebody comes in to see myself or Jen, we do a symptomology overview. So somebody will bring us a complete, like, we send out an intake form and we basically break down the entire existence of your life. And it can be superficial, but again, the intuitive aspect of how I've learned to work, sometimes we'll dive into certain areas of your life, and that gives me clues as to where to look. So that's kind of like step one. We do the intake form, then we look at your blood. So we have high-powered microscopes that use dark field microscopy, and we look at one drop of your blood under this kind of dark field. And you can see, here, I'll show you quickly. This is typically what you would see in dark field. So your red blood cells look like this guy here. White blood cells look like these guys down here. So you see a collection of what your red blood cells are doing, your white blood cells. If there's pathogens, you can kind of see the acidity of the environment, the matrix, aka the terrain, or the lymphatic system. What does that look like? So now we have two pieces of information to kind of stack against each other. And a lot of times the blood is just validating what we've kind of put together from the intake forms. Then the third thing that we do is use bioenergetic resonance. In the States, there was a course called Quantum Reflex Analysis, and it was by, I think his name was Dr. Robert Marshall. I apologize for people who know that. I did not study with him. But behind me, you'll see like a little test kit, and then I have all of these testers behind me. And what we're doing is testing the meridian system using acupuncture points. And it's kind of like testing an electrical field on the body. And all of these supplements work as tuning forks. So when an acupuncture point is resonating off, these supplements will either turn that point on or off based on their vibration. So that's how we piece together how your protocol looks. So if you were to go to a naturopath and you go with eczema and you have all these functional tests, they might give 5 people the exact same protocol. I will be like 100% honest. We did not have the same protocol for 2 clients when I worked with my eczema company. They were all completely different based on the bioenergetic resonance of their bodies. So the only difference now when you come to see us versus when you're doing this from a distance is obviously we can't look at your blood if you're in Singapore. So we will do the intake form, and then Jen and I will muscle test them from a distance. Kind of like how people do Reiki from a distance. It works in the quantum field. We have the ability to tap into other people's energy bodies and muscle test them from a distance with a high degree of accuracy. Like, it blows me away. It took me 2 years to really understand that what we were doing was real. Because I was like, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. And now I'm very convinced that it's the real deal.
So do you not run things like stool tests and things like food sensitivity tests, things like that? Is it predominantly just those 2 things that you do?
Those are the 2 things that I do. I was trained in like hair analysis. The functional stuff, I don't know. We have a lot of clients that would come to us who have spent thousands of dollars doing like stool tests or GI maps or Dutch tests, urine samples. And sure, they're helpful. But again, they're just telling you specifically what's in there. Where energetically, like I think that I can pick up on more energetically than the stool sample can, because parasites aren't stupid. They're not just falling out in your stool unless they're dead or sick. So if you think that you're going to get an accurate parasite depiction from a stool sample, I think you might be buying something that someone's trying to sell you. Just based on, like, I've had clients show up and their stool sample says there's no parasites. And when I muscle test them, I'm like, you have parasites. But maybe they're not in your digestive system. You know, maybe they're in your ovaries, maybe they're in your kidneys, maybe they're in your heart. They could be in your brain. So I don't always think that they're worth the money if you have access to an energetic practitioner who can do like whether it's the machine, like a bioresonance machine, or somebody that can do what Jen and I do.
The other thing with a stool test is that they don't test for an infinite number of parasites as well. So it might come back as negative, but you might have another parasite that just wasn't part of the test.
Yeah, you could have just been in the middle of a cycle where the nymphs are just hatching, or like they're hatching out of their egg in their nymph stage. And those guys are probably hanging on for dear life. If they're hanging out in your liver, your gallbladder, are you kidding me? Why would they want to come out? If there's no provocative supplement to flush something out, even with heavy metals, you're not going to get an accurate depiction unless you have a provocative test that pushes heavy metals out to test in the stool.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I know we've spoken about this before, and we do have permission to talk about this. Can you talk a bit about my niece Carly and her case and how you helped her overcome, which was, severe eczema?
Yeah, I would love to. So this is another reason that really connected me to the muscle testing. So when I met Carly, she was dealing with just eczema flares all over, right? And so when we went through her health history, things were good. She had implants, breast implants put in. And then that was, for the sake of this conversation, let's say that was the thing that stood out the most. And when Jen and I were muscle testing, we're going through all of our organs in her body, and things were typically good. There was a lot of candida and yeast overgrowth. So then the question is, what's feeding the yeast and candida? So if we use metal toxins in the body, they either say yes or no. And let's say for her instance, they were saying no. So it's like, hey, the metal isn't feeding. What else is feeding? So we can energetically test different parts of the body. And when we tested her breasts, it was like we pull our fingers apart, and when it's strong, it's strong. It was like the weakest. I couldn't hold on at all. And so we knew there's something happening with her breast implants that's influencing the rest of her body. And so I remember I don't know, it might have been like 2 years. When did we meet? March 20. So it was a year. A year from when we met, she got the explant. But for that entire year, all we could do was open the drainage port so that whatever was being created in her body was able to find its way out, because we couldn't attack the yeast. It was just growing back because the implants would have been infected to some extent. And I don't know if a functional test would have been able to tell you that, or a practitioner. I don't know if that's something that somebody else would have picked up. I'm sure that many other people could have, but it was just very unique to that situation where we just found that the implants were causing an issue, and we're operating out of a house in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and she's across the world in Greater London.
Yeah. It won't surprise you to know I did tell her to have them removed.
There you go. Yeah. See,
I didn't even know she'd had them done until I think she'd had them in for months and months, and then she told me. I was like, oh, I didn't even know.
Some people don't have issues at all. That's the other thing. It's like women for years and years and years have breast implants with no issues at all. Maybe the scar tissue is creating some sort of inflammation, but it's so subjective. Like I love getting tattoos. I love different types of body modifications. I know they're not good for me. I treat them when I get them done or when they start to cause me issues. But you're allowed to get dirty. And it's nice when you have the background that I do, because you know how to clean things up, you know? So it's nice to have someone like us on your team if you like to go and do stuff like that.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it was, the situation with Cardi was quite hard for me to watch,
Yeah.
because she did come to me for help from the beginning, and I did help her to a degree, but
Yeah.
I'm a family member. I'm not her practitioner.
It's tough.
And it's so difficult. And then,
Yeah.
when she said to me, "Oh, I'm going to, find someone to work with," I said, "Fantastic. That's what you need
Yeah.
to do."
I'm glad she found us, honestly.
Yeah, no, I am too. And it was tough to watch because at times, our mental health wasn't great, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Someone's whole body is covered in scabs and flakes, and you're
Yeah.
young, and for most of that time, she was single as well. So
Yeah.
when you're single and young, and you just don't feel good, and sometimes I'd get panicky phone calls from my mother, her grandmother,
Yeah.
saying, "Lee, do something, do something." My mum was really panicking, and yeah, it was just very, very hard to watch. And
Yeah, it's devastating. Yeah, Carly's a sweetheart. I always enjoyed our conversations, and when we met, we'd end up just chatting about life. But it was really great to work with her.
Yeah, and what's great now is that she's got her life back.
Yeah.
She barely thinks about it now, rather than she couldn't let her dogs go near her, or my parents' dog. We had to keep the dogs away, and she loves dogs. And
Yeah.
it's so good to see her now, with dogs around her. And as I said to you before we started recording, she's kind of, eating nowhere near as strict as she was eating before when she did have the eczema, and she's not flaring. I mean, she's got a tiny, tiny little bit of eczema under her nose at the moment, but it's not, I don't think it's really bothering her that much.
And it could be, again, that could just be backwashing that filter again.
Mm.
Like, your body is at a point, it knows what it's doing, but maybe you need to go in and do some like lymphatic drainage, kidney drainage, maybe mess with the liver and the gallbladder a little bit, like focus on those detox organs, because they're doing their job. They're filtering the blood as they're supposed to. It could even be her spleen, like her spleen's involved with blood filtration too. So if that's my advice to any people that are looking where they can start with very gentle, usually homeopathic, liver, kidney, lymph, bowel. Spleen comes later. Don't do spleen first.
Yeah, sounds good. So one of the questions that I have for you is that I know that you enjoy being the bearer of bad news, but why is that?
I think because I like honesty. It's one of my core values. I would rather somebody be honest than beat around the bush with some bullshit. Give it to me straight. This is why I like Jen. Jen tells you what is happening in real time. She's very upfront and very honest, and I respect that. And it's just easier to filter messages that way. So I quite enjoy telling people the things that they don't want to hear, especially when they're paying me to do it. I'm like, you just paid me to give you some information that you don't want to know, but this is the bridge for you to get to the place that you want to be. So if other people are too timid to be honest with you, I think honesty is one of the biggest values that, or something that people can show you. So to me, it just comes down with being honest with somebody. And I want the best for people. I think everybody deserves to live the same quality of life. And if that comes from a message that you don't like, I don't give a shit. You're going to hear that message.
Yeah.
Take it as you please. And I will be very gentle about it. And I can read people's energy. So I'd never do it maliciously, but I'm going to tell you what you need to hear out of respect for you in your life.
Yeah, that's what we call tough love, right?
Yeah, tough love. And all my clients, like, I'll give you tough love if that's what you need. But again, I can kind of read people to say maybe they don't need that, or maybe they need something a little bit lighter. And that just comes with understanding and working with people. But
yeah, I certainly remember an experience I had with a guy who had acne. He was in his mid-40s, quite a high-powered job. And it was, his acne was pretty bad, and if you're in your mid-40s and you've got a high-powered job, it's not the greatest thing to have.
Yeah.
And, I was getting him to change his diet, but he was just not following. The main thing he was finding very difficult to give up was sugar.
Yeah.
And this went on for a while, and I was trying every coaching trick in my book, and he was still like, no, still kept having sugar. And then one day I just said, I've got to be honest with you. If you carry on the way you're doing, you're going to fail. Is that really what you want?
Yeah.
And I was probably harsher with him than I thought I should have been as well. I think, but I'd run out of options really. And I remember ending the call and I remember thinking, I'm never going to hear from that guy again. And I could tell by his face, I really upset him.
Yeah.
He really felt offended by the way I'd spoken to him. And it came to the next week and I'm looking at my calendar and I'm thinking, yeah, he's not going to book in. And then to my surprise, he books in.
Wow.
And then he turns up and I say, how are you getting on? And he said, I really listened to what you said to me last week. I said, okay. He said, I haven't eaten any sugar. Okay, that's interesting. And how do you feel? He went, I can't believe how good I feel. And he said, in fact, he said, and look at my skin. Like he had really bad acne on his forehead. He said, look, there's no acne on my forehead. I was like, there you go. Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, sometimes you have to do that with clients.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I'm quite a softie. I'm quite a softie in my coaching style, but sometimes people do need that tough love. And
yeah, when people are vulnerable, I think that's another part of the clinic I enjoy is seeing people when they are vulnerable, because I know I can hold that space and that's when they're most authentic. And that's another value of mine is authenticity. Like, I don't want you to come in here and be fake because you're not going to get what you are looking for. And I'll be authentic with you. I am pretty open with my life and the things that I do and the things I enjoy. I like to do a lot of stuff that other people wouldn't think that a natural practitioner would be into. But again, I know how to clean the body. So it's like, I'm going to go play with the darkness for a little bit and then come back to the light. And I think when you admit that to people or share that with people, you gain trust, you gain their access to being vulnerable. And then at that point, you can help them more because you can see them at a deeper level. If they open up to you about some stuff and you're like, hey, cool, now we got to work on your nervous system because this is what you're into, that might bridge the gap from them not healing to actually finding that bridge to health.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, being some kind of coach or practitioner, you've got to be authentic and you've got to be yourself. Right.
Yeah.
You can't be someone or something that you're not.
No.
And it reminds me of, when I teach courses, I spend half my time telling jokes, right? Not for any other, well, there's two reasons. One, the course content is intense.
Right.
So by dropping in jokes here and there, it lightens the stress. So now they can think better.
For sure.
But the second reason is that's who I am. Right. And my jokes are terrible. But my students love it because they know they're terrible jokes, but they laugh at them because they're so bad, right?
Yeah.
But that's just who I am.
But you're setting the container. It's a big thing with psychedelics, right? Like you need to create the container where people feel safe. And when they do, that's when the magic happens. If you can't do that, or like I've been criticized a few times for what I end up wearing in a clinic. And then I hear other people say they have white coat syndrome. And I'm like, I would rather you come in and be comfortable with what I'm wearing and question my skill level because of what I'm wearing. And then when we sit down and talk about shit, you're like, oh, wow, actually, this guy really knows what he's doing. I would rather that route than have somebody have an idea right off the bat. You know what I mean? I just want to make people feel comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing about being the bearer of bad news is also the fact, and this is something that I tell my clients and my students, no one has ever achieved anything amazing by staying in their comfort zone.
For sure.
Right. And so when you're telling someone the truth, sometimes that can be uncomfortable. You can say to someone, oh, everything's okay. You'll be all right. Here's a tablet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're staying in their comfort zone. So what are they going to achieve? They're not going to achieve anything. Right.
No. I
don't see too many Olympic gold medalists having not gone out of their comfort zone to achieve it. Right. And
no.
I often say to my clients, you have to treat your program with me like a athlete would treat a program getting ready for the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
Right. It's not always going to be comfortable. You're going to go through some hard times, but I'm here to support you when you're going through those hard times. But I'm not here to make those hard times go away, you've got to go through them yourself.
I have had phenomenal stories from eczema clients. Some of them choose, let's say I get an email 2 weeks in and it's bad. And they're saying, hey, I'm having a really bad, almost purge or flare. And so we adjust the dosage a little bit, but they're like, no, I'm actually okay with it. I just want to make sure that it's normal. And then when you validate, like, yeah, this is a normal reaction, you can modify it, of course, but some of them like to choose that hard road and push through it. And they have complete spiritual awakenings. Some of the feedback I've got, it blows my mind. Whether it was just intuition, something opened in their intuition, or they made a connection with their energetic body or their spiritual body. It's wild. When you choose to go through the hard shit, things will open up for you.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And what's next for you, Justin?
That's a good question. I feel like I'm in the middle of that right now. I love seeing clients. I love working with clients and really helping them get to the nitty gritty of what's happening. Muscle testing and energy testing is phenomenal. And I think that's my favorite thing to do. My bone broth business is always growing. I just finished a commercial kitchen attached to my house. So I'm looking to expand on that. And I don't know, there's always other things coming in my field, like peptides and better ways to detox. So it's really just going with the flow of what the universe is kind of throwing at me at the time, and seeing what resonates with me and in my heart.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Just follow that path.
Yeah, that sounds great. And where can people find you online?
La Rue, LARUE Nutrition is my business. LaRueNutrition.com. Yeah, you can find anything you need there. If you want to reach out, send me a message or email me. And I can essentially help you wherever you are on the planet. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, fantastic. Justin, thank you so much for your time today. It's been, first of all, really great talking to you. And I also want to say thank you for all the help you gave Carly as well. It's been really good for me to watch her, develop and improve, and she's really got her life back now, which is great. So I want to thank you for that, but also thank you for your time today.
It's honestly my pleasure. It was such a beautiful thing to experience and to witness and to be on the back end of. I think it's really great. So thanks for having me.
Yeah,
this was cool.
Yeah, my pleasure. So that's all from Justin and me for this week. But don't forget to join me same time, same place next week on the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to give the show a rating and a review, and I'll see you next time.